Hi, everyone. I love sharing technology. Those of you who know me know that. And my favorite piece of technology, the one that's changed my life the most, is the brain. And if you want to check it out, you can get a free download at thebrain.com. I think you can get 30 days free trial. It is a full featured version. The ongoing free version is actually a limited edition. It's got limited power, limited functionality. The version I'm going to show you is the Brain. It is their official paid version. I think it's version it's in the 12.0 series. I don't know what the latest one is, but it is in the 12 point series and it is amazing. It's got a lot of functionality. And most importantly, it helps me manage my network. And I'm going to share how I use the Brain to map my network. And I'm actually going to do it by setting up a Brain right here with you. And what I love about the Brain, it's an artificial intelligence platform that connects dots for me. So if I am networking with people and I'm intentional about what I put into the Brain, or you can just be chaotic. I started out just putting all my notes in. The Brain, as you can see, starts to connect things and it'll share mapped links, direct things that you've connected. It'll share backlinks where others are referenced, and then it'll share some unlinked mentions that you might want to go back and link. For the record, I use the Brain for every aspect of my business. I use it to track tasks. I use it to track notes. It's all things to me, and I love it because I can access it on any device, and it syncs. As you can see here, there's a little cloud sync. It is syncing to the cloud as we go. So if you're looking at the version I have, it's roughly $300 per year US, and I have the team version, which is a little bit more advanced. I think the regular version is something like $300 for the first year, 160 year two. I get nothing from the Brain. I love it. That's why I'm sharing it. And I want to share with you how I network with intention. Now, before I jump into the video, I want to save you some time. If your first question is, how do I import my CRM or my database into this? Stop the video. This training is not for you because it'll waste your time. The reality is I see this as a precision tool where I am tracking a low volume, relatively low, and by that I mean under thousands. I'm not looking for tens of thousands. I'm looking at 1,000 or less. And basically it's for people I actually know, like, and trust. And I want to map how I communicate with them, when I communicate with them, and things like that. So I'm going to use the key strategic partner plan because that's a common language I think most of you have heard me talking about. And basically, so this video is for you if you're one of those networkers. Phrases like giver's gain, the go-giver, servant leader, relationships first, business second, those are all kinds of phrases that people who I network with use. We believe we're super connectors. We love connecting people because it's the right thing to do. We're not always looking, with our hand out saying, yeah, I'll connect you with somebody if you connect me with somebody. What's in it for me is not the first question we ask. So I'm building out a Brain. I have one that I use myself. I'm not going to share that because I don't want to expose that to the internet world. But I want to teach you how I built mine. I'm going to do it as quickly as I can. I'm not going to give you all the extra pieces, but this is just specifically how I use the Brain to build a network of human connections, building authentic relationships. So first things first, when you open the Brain, you'll go to the file menu and you'll create a Brain. I've already done that step, so sorry, I'll skip ahead here. The intention of my Brain, this is the way the Brain stores things. They're called thoughts. And the hierarchy is really simple. The top thought is a parent thought. Anything below a top thought is a child thought. So these four things are child thoughts to networking with intention. Networking with intention is the parent to those four. And then these four are sibling thoughts because, as you can see, they're all at the same level. and connected. That's really the biggest thing you need to know. If you want to add a parent thought to something, you just click on the little circle, move up and type it in. If you want to add a child thought, just one, you drag from the bottom circle and you can type it in. If you want to add multiple thoughts as a child, for example, you use a comma to separate them. Sorry, semicolon. Comma has a different purpose, so you can see I just hit enter and it created the thoughts. The brain gets really powerful if you get into color coding and all kinds of wonderful things. You can label these links, you can change the colors of things, you can create a little bit of a mini pipeline so that you can see who you need to connect with and when. But really, truly, that's the power of the brain. And really, my formatting is really, really simple. When I meet a new person, they become a child thought in my network. When they introduce me to someone else, that someone else becomes a child thought underneath that person. So let's say John introduces me to Jane. The hierarchy is I'd have my network at the top. John is a child thought to my network, and Jane is a child thought to John. And all that does is it lets me see the hierarchy of who introduced me to who. And I'll show you the note taking feature in a second. Now, one thing I will share is if you want to delete something, you can either delete it completely by holding the shift key, right clicking and going delete thought, or just without the shift key, if you right click, you can forget the thought. Deleted thoughts are permanently gone. Forgotten thoughts can be found and restored. So just think about whether you want to keep it or keep it around and maybe retrieve it, or if it's gone, that's fine. So the way I work, the other thing I think that you need to know, we'll talk about links and notes in a second, but the other thing is the difference between types and tags. And this is the powerful features that are in the paid version that you don't get in the ongoing free version. The way I look at it, these are both labeling options. And the way I see it, a type is something that's permanent, whereas a tag is something that's transient. So for example, something that's permanent about somebody in your network might be the industry they work in or the company that they work in. That's less likely to change. Whereas the tag, the transient thing, might be their role. So if somebody is in sales at XYZ company, the type might be either sales or XYZ company, but the actual tag would be their role at the company today. So maybe they're a customer service rep, maybe they're a business development manager. That's more likely to change. One last thing I forgot to mention, we have something called jump thoughts. And these are thoughts that don't really have a hierarchy, but they're connected to something. So for example, I use jump thoughts to denote where I've met people. You can also use types for that. We'll talk about personal preference as we go, but a jump thought is out to the side. So you can see there, and you won't see that for anything else, unless of course you add the categories. So now if I click on jump thoughts, you can see I've got these two things. And a lot of people get really nervous. What if I make a mistake? What if I put something somewhere I shouldn't? The brain is really easy. I don't want either of these to tie in. So I right click on the link and I just say unlink. And you can see now with jump thought, all I have is networking with intention. So I'm going to delete jump thought because I don't need it. And so what I'm going to do for the rest of the video is take the lesson of the Key Strategic Partner Plan, and I'm going to help you build it in the brain. There's some powerful things. There's some visuals. The first thing is, if you set it up right, and we can talk about preferences in another video, I have a little thing that shows I have a note under here. As you can see, I don't have notes under any of these other things. So I'm going to walk you through how I set up the brain with my network using the Key Strategic Partner Plan. And my goal is you can copy along, you can do it exactly as you see fit. So I've done a little bit of advanced work just because I want to speed up the video. But basically, we're going to start with networking with intention. And so the default view is you're going to have the plex on the left, which is where the thoughts reside. And then you'll have your notes on the right. You can change that around by clicking on this little square with the arrows. And if you want to maximize your notes, you just click on this arrow, or if you want to minimize the notes, you click on the little arrow. And then if you want to flip it around, and what I do when I'm on a Zoom call with somebody, I have exactly this view open. I have my notes. I share it on half a screen. And on the other screen, I have my Zoom so that I can take notes while I talk to people. And again, this is about relationships. So I'll usually make a note of who introduced me to them, who I should introduce them to, and I'll show you how to do that as tasks. Actually, I'll show you that right now. There's this wonderful thing. You can create a checkbox list, which when you click on it, it turns them into to-do items. And the brain has this wonderful little feature. If you click on this, it'll show you the to-do items that you need to work on. So what I'll usually do is, as I'm talking to somebody, if they say, oh, I'm going to introduce you to this person, I put in follow up to thank them for the introduction, assuming they make it. The other thing I'll do is if I promise to make an introduction for them, I'll put it in. And the really cool part is you can add dates to these things so that, and if I want to turn it into a bulleted list, I can, and it'll disappear from my to-do list. See, it appears over here. It takes a minute here, and then we'll just make it go away. And then the to-do list, you just click on this to make it hide. So the first thing, I'm going to assume that you already did your Key Strategic Partner Plan. And you can see I've created 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I have 12 categories. You can have as many or as few categories as you want. But the types I'm going to use, you can also create types using these. It's a little bit redundant, but it allows us some functionality going forward. So I'm going to just show you again using the semicolon, and you customize the categories to your business. Do not copy mine without thinking about it. I'll tell you a little bit about that in a second, but the key is you want to work with people who also work with your ideal clients. So my ideal client is businesses, business owners. So therefore, I am putting in the appropriate categories for me. And I'm going to do this on the fly just so that you can see how quick it is. And by the way, you can always change this later. You can add more or not. But there you go. So now if I go back and look, oops, sorry, I got this wrong in terms of types. Apparently you can only add them one by one. So I'm going to take out all of these. Okay, so basically you want to create one type at a time. So now you can see, oh, there we go. It's been a while since I've used types. It's one of those, I set it up and then I forget it. Okay, so new type. And basically I just like to go through the types and create them so you can see here. if as I want to delete something, again, Shift delete. Okay, so now I have just a couple types. I'm not going to get into all of it. And then tags, the most important tags we'll talk about a little bit more detail in a second. But some of the tags I use will be group 1, new tag, two, and you'll recognize this from the key strategic partner plan, and I'll show you what that means in a second here. So basically, we're going to create a child thought of people. Now, we already talked about John, Jane, Joe, these are just random names, but you can see I separated them with the semicolon. So now if we go to people, and people is active, so here are the people underneath. And now this is where we can start to connect dots and things like that. So for example, Bob, we might want a jump thought, and we might do categories. And you might, put the actual, so let's put Bob, let's pretend Bob is an accountant and Bob is in group 1. Okay, so you can see that, oops, sorry. Bob's type is accounting and Bob's tag is group 1. So we'll just remove that and we'll unlink that. Okay, so you can see here now when we go up to accounting, we can see that Bob is both a thought, so he's part of our accounting category, and it's also a type. So you might get a little confused if you have both. I like it because it gives me flexibility. It's up to you. But I'm going to show you a couple things in regards to how we connect with people, how we build those relationships. So going back to people, let's say Jane is also an accountant, and you just hover over it and click, and it comes up with these. So the type, she is in the accounting profession. And this time, I don't know Jane as well as I do Bob. So Jane is group 2. Now, let's say Joe is also an accountant. I've just met him. So I'm going to give him the type of accountant, the tag group 3, because I just barely met him. I don't know him really well. And what I'm going to show you is really cool. Okay, so when we look at it, and by the way, if this was color coded, I won't go through it in the video, but if it's color coded, it's really nice to see. You can see at a glance, I would give my group 1 people a certain color, a group 2 a certain color, group 3 another color. And the reason is you're going to put most of your time and energy into group 1. So what I want to do for group 1, I'm going to click on the tag here. And I'm going to right click and say create pin. Now I'm going to go to group 2. And you can see I can access it from here or here. I'm going to right click, create pin. And lastly, I'm going to go to group 3 and I'm going to create pin. So if you remember from the key strategic partner plan, there are 12 categories, and then there are 3 columns. Column 1 is your most frequent touches. Those are the people. Column 1, you communicate with them at least once a month. Column 2 is people you know a little less, but they're your second choice, your second favorite. So they're still favorite, but second favorite. You're going to communicate with them every 2 months. And then guess what? Group 3, column 3, you're going to communicate with them every 3 months. So most of your referrals are going to come from your group 1. You'll get referrals from group 2, and think of group 3 as your feeder team, your farm team, where you're looking to build relationships so that eventually if you ever need a category 1 that's missing, you can move them up. Same with group 2, you want to build the relationship. And here's the magic. You want to introduce everybody in your group 1 to each other, everybody in your group 2 to each other, everybody in your group 3 to each other. The wonderful thing about networking intentionally is the more you give, the more you gain. And again, this is not about personal gain, but it is truly, if you're in business, you want to build relationships first, but you still want to earn business. So the magic is if you put all your favorite people in group 1 together, all your second favorite people in group 2, and your third favorite people in group 3, if you introduce them to one another, they will get the hint. They will understand, wait a minute, Jeff does this networking thing intentionally. I'm going to bring people to Jeff. And the magic is if you have any holes in your network, you can ask them specifically, do you know an amazing accountant I can add to my network? So there are a couple things I can show you. And by the way, I would probably put a pin for my categories as well, so that I can see at a glance. And the great thing is up here, this is just, if you need to jump somewhere, you can go to the pins. Now, if you ever don't want it there, you can remove the pin. And if you want to get to your home thought, you can always just click the home button. So now there are a couple of, and this is the beautiful thing about the brain. Normally you remember somebody's name first, and then you go to the CRM and you look them up. The beautiful thing is if you can't remember somebody's name, you can look at the accounting categories, or in this case, I think we just set it up as type. So if I click on the accounting type, I can see at a glance, here's my network of accountants. Now, pretending we had more people, I can see at a glance who's in my group. And again, this is where you can add, see, I hover over Bob. I can see that Bob is in my accounting space. So a couple of things, I would have different colors for each group 1, 2, and 3, and I would have colors for each category. That way at a glance, you can see who you have, who you're missing. And by the way, for group 1, you might say, I'm missing an attorney, ask for referrals, period. And then we can turn that into a task. And just best practice, I also, using this little insert date time thing, I put a date on it. So today is April or March 31st. I might say follow up by April 3rd. And what you can do for each of these, and I'll show you my notes and then we'll wrap this video up because I think this gives you a great place to start. There are a couple little shortcuts that I love. The first is the minus sign. If you press it 3 times, it gives you a nice little line. And so what I do as a best practice, when I'm taking notes, I always put a line and then I'll put the date, and then I use bullets to take my notes. And so this is just sort of the format I do. Okay, and I'm going to show you a couple of things. I like to make these my dates. You can choose whatever you want, but I always make them subtitled too. And then the cool part is, you see this little arrow, I can close or open that. And when I talk to Bob next, I do the 3 minus signs, I get another line. I insert, so let's pretend I talk to Bob every day. And this is really easy editing. It's what you see is what you get. It's very similar to Word, Excel. And then I make my notes again. And maybe here, Bob to Phyllis. Okay. So I want to show you a couple of quick little magical things because this is where the brain starts to get powerful. So my dear friend Josh Rhodes told me, embrace the chaos. Don't worry about perfect. You can go back and organize. Maybe make a task to follow up with Bob. Whatever you think is important. But the fun part, and this is where the brain gets really powerful, is again, maybe I didn't write down that Bob was introduced to me by Joe. So there's a couple things I would do here. You can see it gives you the little dots. If I right click, I can either jump straight to Joe, or I can link to Joe, or I can add a link or something like that. So in this case, I'm going to link to Joe. And again, you'll remember that my hierarchy is the people who introduced me to someone go above the person. So I'm going to take Bob and just drag it over to Joe here. And now you can see that Bob, if we just see Bob, I was introduced to Bob by Joe, and Bob is an accountant. So you can see how that works, but let's go back to here. I can now click on this quickly to get back, and you can see there's a backlink to Bob and Joe here. Now, the other thing, let's go back to Bob. So I want to introduce Bob to Phyllis. I can either create a to-do list, a task, and here's the cool thing. I can link to Phyllis. So when I go back, I remember, oh yeah, I was going to introduce Bob to Phyllis. And one of the powerful things about all of this, as a networker, I love connecting people, but I hate writing their story every time and trying to be unique, trying to remember exactly how they want to be introduced. So one of the things I would also do is I have a category of who their ideal client is, and I just use hashtags. So maybe they work with lawyers, hashtag, maybe software companies, something like that. And what that does is it lets me create and search for people, and it helps me create connections. So I always have their ideal client. I also have their solutions offered. So accounting, tax, and again, I would use a hashtag for that because it makes it easier to sort later. And then the last thing is introduction. I'll call it introduction statement. You can call it whatever you want. And again, I like the tidiness of headings. And you can create a template and just copy and paste this over and over so you don't have to keep doing it. But here's the really, really powerful thing. Once I've decided that Bob needs to meet Phyllis and vice versa, Bob loves golf and accounting, period. And so I'm not going to take the time to write this, but basically what I'll do is I'll say to Bob when I'm talking to him, how would you like to be introduced? Who do you want to be introduced to? And what I can do then when I go to introduce Bob to Phyllis is I can compose an email customized to the two of them, but I can copy and paste their introduction statements into the email, and I don't have to rewrite it every single time. And then I can also, I like traffic lights. So I give people ratings based on feedback I get. So if I introduce Bob to 5 people and 5 people tell me, please stop, Bob was terrible, I'm going to give Bob a red light. And at some point, I remove Bob from my network. Now, that's very, very rare, but it does happen. And honestly, it's usually going to happen with your group 3 people. With your group 1 people, hopefully you know them well enough and you can track it. But if somebody's constantly getting negative reviews, you can do 5-star if you want. But honestly, I like to do just, green is this is a great person. I trust them. They trust me. I'll make introductions without asking. Amber or yellow, we're still getting to know each other. And then red is there's a problem and either I need to address it or I need to remove them from my network. And basically, this might feel like a little bit of extra work, but once you've built it out and you go back and take your notes and you check in, it's amazing because sometimes you might see, maybe Bob is looking to raise money for a charity. You might see somebody else in your network who also supports that charity, and you can connect the two of them just to build the relationship. Now, the last part I'm not going to get into is you can actually edit these little lines. So you can show link properties and you can actually give them labels and you can actually color code them and you can make them a one-way or a two-way. You'll get to know that stuff later, but for now, just focus, honestly, if you do nothing else, start with your people. Have a list of your categories, a list of your people, and start putting things in and start putting in the notes. I know people who use other note-taking things like Evernote. They've abandoned it to use this because they can copy all their stuff in. But honestly, for me, just start today and you'll be amazed the connections you build in your brain that you didn't know were there. So this is a little bonus thing. I just wanted to give you a tool. I found CRMs don't work for me because they're very linear and I have to remember, okay, who was it that professionally races horses? I have to remember the name to find the fact. Whereas here, if you find the fact and say, oh, they like horses, I can do a search and see who else likes horses. And I don't know if I showed you this, but the best and most powerful tool is the search. So you can see if I type in Joe, for example, I have a thought that is the person Joe, but I also have notes in under Bob that refer to Joe. So the search functionality in this is amazing. But that's my initial overview of the brain. I hope you found it very useful. And again, I get nothing out of the brain. I don't earn a commission. This is not an affiliate video, anything like that. All I like to do is show people. For me personally, I made about 500 introductions last year in the month of May alone. Yes, I counted them. And my brain started to hurt and I was literally forgetting people, forgetting follow-up. So I started on a search and said, how can I find a tool that'll help me? And the brain is that. And by the way, when you're taking your notes, you can add a task and say next follow-up is due by. So maybe I'm going to follow up with him May 1st, and then you'll see the reminders. And again, you can also create color coding of, who do I need to follow up with in the next month and the month after. But I just wanted to give you a basic understanding of the brain. I hope this helps, and I wish you all the best as you build your network, building authentic relationships one by one. So thank you.